All right, well then let's call the meeting to order. Do we have a secretary? Or are we taking minutes, or I guess we decide we don't need to take minutes for the public meeting?
We have a secretary. I
Correct.
think it's okay to take some notes, but I don't think we need to publish any minutes.
No,
All
this
right,
is a
well,
this is a public meeting. It's not a.
Well, let's get this meeting going. David, why don't
Solman
you,
gets off easy.
David, why don't you walk us through what we've got on the program for the night?
Excellent. It'd be my honor. Make sure I'm not muted. Perfect. Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. So hello. Thank you all for joining us for the 2023 Land Trust annual meeting. We do have a wonderful evening prepared for you where we will share updates, highlights from 2022, progress to date, and leave plenty of room to answer any of your questions. It's exciting time to be involved. Hold on one second here. I think I have the wrong talking points in front of me. But nonetheless, the guest speaker we have in store for you toward the end of the meeting is none other than Gordy Elkins, the Executive Director of Highstead. There we go. His talk's going to illuminate the importance of creating and restoring native habitats, mainly through projects like the Ecotype project. So please make sure you stick around and to the very end for Q&A with Gordy.
Yeah, you're in there.
So as I was saying before, 2022 was a fantastic year for the Land Trust, and I'm incredibly proud of our team, our great board of trustees, our bookkeeper, Lee, our interns, and more importantly, you, our members, our volunteers, friends, partners. Thank you for supporting our critical mission. Here in front of you, you have the agenda. So those of you who were present for the earlier members meeting, we already took care of all that on the left, and we're moving forward with what you see on the right. So basically, if I had a few people ask me the difference, the members is more business and the public is more the show. And a moment ago at our members meeting, we elected our slate of officers for a 2-year term and a new trustee, Lori Fusco. The trustees that were reelected from the Land Trust are Mark Rice, Scott Bogan, and Rob Solman. We also reviewed our finances and voted on our 2023 budget. So please join me in welcoming our slate of officers. As you could see them here on the screen, the continuity was important to us, so most of them are the same. However, we did add Rob Solman as the secretary, and our exiting secretary, Mark Rice, is still with us in various ways through committees, and we also have him for 4 more years, so who knows, he might be secretary again one day. So please join me in welcoming Lori Fusco. I am very pleased to be working with her more closely, as I have been working with her and her family for a few years now at our Stewardship Sundays. There's no doubt I don't have a single doubt that she's going to bring the Land Trust to new heights. So welcome, Lori. The Land Trust is a 503(c) charitable nonprofit. Our mission has become ever more critical. We're doing more than we ever have before to advance it. I just wanted to make it clear that we are not a municipal government body or commission, nor do we receive regular funding from the town, state, or federal government. In fact, we get 100% of our operational funding from you, our members. Our members are the driving force behind our organization's success. They fuel our work and make it possible for us to advance our mission. Without our members, we would simply not sustain our mission, nor the impacts we have on the communities we serve. So some general housekeeping, as you can tell, if you see the little red light somewhere, the meeting is being recorded, and all participants were muted upon entry. So please leave your mics muted, but feel free to undo them during our Q&A sections. Other than that, enjoy. So next up, it's over to you, Steve, for your president's report.
All right, David, thanks so much. Good evening, everybody at the Wilton Land Trust, and thank you all for joining us this evening. What's going to be a great program. I'm going to just take a couple of minutes and tell you what we've been up to this year. Give you a little progress update on 183 Richfield Road. But the main event today is Jody Elkins, who's going to give us a wonderful talk about the local plants. So we've been very busy this year at the Land Trust with lots of initiatives. Some of the work we've been doing at our level, the board level, is what sounds pretty boring, but it's actually the stuff that gets the hard work done. It's the thing that makes the organization work. So we rewrote our bylaws. We've been organizing our committees. We set proper goals for ourselves. We put together a bottom-up budget, voted on it. We tried to finish off 183 Richfield Road, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Much of the work that we actually accomplished this year was done by David McCarthy, our executive director, without whom we wouldn't be where we are. So thank you, David, for your wonderful work that you've done. David's going to enumerate some of the work that we have been doing later on here in the program. We always need to relearn the truth that you can't have a good organization without good people. And whenever we forget that, we make a mistake. But I want to let you know that we do have good people in our organization. We've got a wonderful set of officers. We've got good trustees. We've got talented individuals around us. We have important accounting staff, Lee Rossiter, who's done a wonderful job for us as well. So thank you to all of those people who run this organization. We just wish we had some more of you. I think we've seen that we've lost 4 of our trustees this year. Megan Donovan, Paige Kellogg, Frank Mabley, and Donna Merrill. Thank you once again to all of you for having served with us on your 4-year terms, particularly Donna and Frank, who've served multiple 4-year terms. And lastly, we can't, of course, run this organization without our members. And our members are I think we're up into the 300 to 400 number now. David will tell us in more detail. We need our members to support us with work and donations and ideas. I want to encourage any of our members who would like to get more involved, roll up your hands and roll up your sleeves and get involved in the work of the Land Trust. Please let us know. We want to talk to you. We can put you to work. So let David or myself know if you find it's interesting work for yourselves. So a little bit now about 183 Richfield Road. This has been in the well, actually we had ourselves in the newspaper about a year ago. Good Morning Wilton said Wilton Land Trust has hit a snag, and yes, we had. This time a year ago, I was announcing that we were going to be opening up Chestnut Meadows later on in the year. But what happened was we were engaged with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we had a couple of problems. And we were forced to withdraw our application because we were running out of the time allotted for these applications to go through. So I think in a nutshell, what happened was we stumbled because of our driveway and our intended use statement. So the first one was the driveway. And David, maybe you can show us the picture of the driveway here. These are some nice barn pictures. So if you take a look at the existing driveway now, David, can you point out the existing driveway? So the existing driveway is more toward the top of your screen there. What we were able to do with the good thoughts of our traffic study team was imagine moving that driveway to where it is now. This is the new proposed driveway, is the red area. And the new proposed driveway, what it does is it increases the sight lines. Now, it's not obvious from looking at this picture that moving it this little bit, it's only about 100 feet from the old location of the new location. But what it does is it increases the sight lines so that people entering the driveway from the south can see a car that would be stopped making a left-hand turn. This proposed driveway now is only going to allow a right-hand turn, and this is not what you would have dreamt for, but the alternative was a much longer driveway that would have gone way to the south of the property. It would have chewed up so much of the beautiful meadow, and it would have been prohibitively expensive. So this is really the workable driveway that we came up with. I think it's a very elegant solution to a complicated problem. We have the State Department of Transportation has signed off on the driveway, and we hope that the Planning and Zoning Commission will do the same thing. The other area where we hit a little bit of a stumble with the Planning and Zoning Commission was in identifying the use of the land. So we are required to apply to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, for a special use permit because this is a residential area. And the use that we have for the property is not a residential use. It's a little bit like a nature preserve, but there's nothing in the town regulations for nature preserves. So we've had to craft up a special use for the property in a residential area. And that's why that's the nature of the permit that we've asked for. But when we did it the first time, we could only imagine the sinful things that the Planning and Zoning Commission thought we might be up to. So we in rethinking it now, we really targeted our use to a very narrow and very targeted set of uses that we've spelled out very carefully. And we think that this will be much more acceptable to the commission than what we had done before. Our new plan, we're just finalizing these plans now. We're going to submit them probably today or tomorrow to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get on their calendar, hopefully to get on the calendar February 27th, and then the next meeting will be March the 13th, when we'll actually have a public hearing, we hope. So please give us your support, cross your fingers for us that we can successfully negotiate this hurdle with the Planning and Zoning Commission. If we can get through the Planning and Zoning Commission this time, which we really think we should be able to do, then we should be able to start up construction on the new driveway this spring and finish off the barn, finish off the lovely demonstration gardens that you'll see there. We have a lot of work to do, masonry, patching up stone walls, and pulling this whole project together. I have high hopes it's going to be a very beautiful project that we're all going to be proud of. So I'd be happy to take questions now, if there are any, on what's happening with the barn and what's happening with planning and zoning. Can you, David, can you take that picture down and go back to the gallery so we can see if anybody wants to ask a question?
Take this, you don't want this on the screen? You want to?
No, just go back to the picture of the people.
What do you mean the picture of the people? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean,
Stop
the gallery
screen.
where you see all the
stop
people.
sharing. Yeah.
Stop sharing. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. So are there any questions about what we're doing up there at 183 Richfield Road or anything else that I've said? I'd love to try to answer them.
Yeah, it's Jim Kapuska. The only question I have, Stephen and David, why has it taken so long to get through to the P&Z? I mean, they seem to move at a snail's pace, and I don't understand why the delay.
David, that's such a great question. I wish I could be better at answering it. We on the Land Trust are novices at this, and we I guess we learned the hard way that you can't be a novice and expect to get through the commission unscathed. I really don't understand it very well. It's a sort of a complicated arcane process. Requires lots and lots of preparation. We have a battery of experts that have been drawing up plans, and we've had to check with the fire department and with the health department and with the with the planning group, and we've just spent a lot of time trying to satisfy all these needs that we perceive, and it's very difficult to find checklists for all the things that you need to go through. So it's a learning curve for us. It's a difficult process. What we're trying to do, this idea about having a nature center in a residential area, that required some changes. The building codes don't have all the answers for the questions that we had, so we had to scratch around and try to find them ourselves.
All right, so
the best I can do.
No, that's great. That's great. What do you think the chances of success are of the new entrance and exit? I mean, it seems to make sense. I mean, there was a little bit of a challenge when you tried to turn left and there was a blind spot and all that. I get that. But what do you think the chances are of getting them to say, okay?
Well, I think they're pretty good. First of all, they required us to commission a traffic study, which we did. The traffic study guys were terrific. They were helpful. They have blessed this new driveway. They've taken it to the state DOT. They have blessed the driveway. So I'm thinking that the Planning and Zoning Commission will do the same thing, because they've asked for the traffic study. We've given it to them. They've gotten everybody to agree. So I have had very high hopes that we can pull this thing off. And if we don't, I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, well, thanks for your question. Are there any other questions I can try to answer? Okay, well then I think that's the end of my report. David, are you next on the agenda? I don't have it in front of me.
Thank you. Yes, I am. But before I go into my talk, I noticed that Senator Marilyn Moore had joined us. I wanted to just open the floor briefly for her if she'd like to share any words regarding conservation in Connecticut.
Good evening. This is my first time meeting with you all. I received an invite and I wanted to just be able to listen in. I did hear a comment about why is it so hard on zoning, planning and zoning. It's the universal problem, not just in Wilton, but it seems to pop up in a lot of places that they're not responsive and they're very slow. And I think that's just internal workings, that things just don't get done. But I'm here just to listen. Someone, when I signed up, it asked what was my favorite land trust, and of course you all would be it because I'm on your call in Wilton, but I'm here just to listen. But thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Very welcome.
One moment here, folks. Okay, can everyone see the 183 pretty picture here?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you all for being here. My report is as short and sweet as possible to leave plenty of room for the highlight of the evening, which is our guest speaker, Gordy Elkins of Highstead. Hello, everyone. My name is David McCarthy. I'm extremely proud to share that I am the executive director of the Wilton Land Trust. Driving around in Wilton, you can't help but to notice the abundance of conserved land, protected waters, timeless meadows, and historic rock walls. I'm here to say that we are Wilton's Land Trust, and we preserve and protect those spaces. 2022 was a productive year, very productive, in fact, that we set records and beat 2022 in many ways. This is my third annual meeting And a lot has changed since my first report back in 2020. I thought to myself, we're doing so much more. How am I going to communicate everything we're doing in 10 to 15 minutes? So I boiled everything down to these 6 categories, and my report is going to go through each one of them. As a community-focused nonprofit, we're intimately interwoven into the fabric of Wilton and the greater Wilton community. Our board consists of 14 trustees, a small but growing staff consisting of yours truly, our bookkeeper, Lee, and our recently hired stewardship programs manager, Cornel. Cornel is here to help us expand our stewardship and professional youth internship opportunities. In his role, he will oversee and overhaul our stewardship programs, including our internship program. Launched in 2020 with just 1, our internship program has grown to accept 4, and now with Cornel, possibly more. Our amazing 2022 and continuing into 2023 interns are Jill Roberts and Afraz Ali, Anna Morello, and Ethan Lipper. They are great environmental leaders, learning and working on land stewardship and nonprofit business management right here with the Wilton Land Trust. We recognize leadership at the Wilton High School Academic Awards. And we remember leadership with the great loss of Bob Russell. We have a website page dedicated for those who wish to learn more about Bob, his gifts to Wilton, and his conservation success stories with the Wilton Land Trust. Last but not least, there's you, literally you, our members and volunteers. You are without a doubt the heart and soul of our beloved Land Trust. And really, none of our work is possible without you. Everything we will share tonight and have shared tonight was due to you and your support, which is why I take my time to try to capture the spirit and generosity of our volunteers and put them here on our website. Feel free, anyone, to go take a look if you're interested in learning what it looks like to be more involved, or if you were involved and you want to just see some of the work you did over the years. To get more involved with our critical mission, feel free to reach out and learn more, figure out if maybe you want to join a committee, and the best way you can donate your time and talents that can help advance our mission. We made much progress in 2022 and on all fronts. We set new records in membership and general trust contributions, volunteers in the field, trees planted, invasive species removed, partnerships made, public events held, and so much more. Together, we significantly advanced our stewardship efforts of removing invasive species, supporting endangered wildlife, protecting water quality and habitat, restoring native forests and meadows, and more importantly, we're building a community that's centered around nature. And you made all this possible. We're a membership organization, and our efforts to preserve open space and protect biodiversity depend solely on you. 100% of our operational funding comes from our membership support. Our development committee is hard at work. As you can see here, 2022 marked the highest year of charitable giving on record. And support for our critical mission is growing through tax-deductible contributions, volunteerism, partnerships, and corporate support. We're proud to share that in 2022, we, as Steve mentioned earlier, yes, we hit 400 members, a record high. In 2022, we founded our endowment fund and revitalized our planned giving policy to help sustain our critical mission long into the future. We're helping residents create their lasting legacies. By including the Wilton Land Trust Endowment Fund in your long-term plans, you're preserving and protecting Wilton's scenic, historic, and natural landscapes for future generations. If you're interested in making any special donations, feel free to reach out. In 2022, we welcomed 3 new outstanding trustees who have brought invaluable skills and experience to further our mission. We established new connections. with our members and neighbors like those at Henderson Pond and Harrison Smith Preserve, with policymakers and local leaders, and we improved Wilton's connection to nature. In 2022, we advanced our mission, restored native habitats, and enriched the Wilton community through programs and partnerships. We firmly believe in the power of partnerships. We're working with our community partners to connect people with nature through inclusive and engaging workshops, programs, and recreational opportunities that are for all ages. Such as our first annual Sunset Lantern Walk held last year. We had about 65 hikers meet at the Eugenia Slaughter Native Wildflower Meadows with their own lanterns to hike through a fall sunset. Whoops. There was a slide with the Cub Scouts. There we go. Yeah, on the hike, we had a Weston third grade Cub Scout Bear Den joined us. They all made their own lanterns, and they even earned a badge for completing the hike. We also aim to demonstrate that nature can also just be fun, and we actively engage and encourage people to get out there and explore it. Partnerships and programs has been a tremendous growth area for us as we work to deliver original programming to expand our network and advance our mission. In 2022, we had over 1,000 restaurants. Yeah, we opened up 1,000 restaurants. No, 1,000 registrants across our 21 programs. In 2022, we developed new partnerships to create exciting programs such as Poetry in the Preserve featured here, where we partnered with the Wilton Library and the Connecticut Poetry Society to take poets and artists out into a meadow to read passages. In 2022, we continued our partnership with the Woodcock Nature Center to develop and deliver 3 hiking events, 2 Trekking Together programs, and 1 eBird birding workshop. And if you're wondering what everyone's looking at right now, it's actually a bald eagle. We partnered with the Sharon Audubon Center for our first ever Birds of Prey event. 60 visitors came to a land trust meadow to learn more about these fascinating creatures. And in 2022, with the support of our community, we expanded our American chestnut tree germplasm orchard by planting 30 more trees. With 40 there now and 20 being planted this spring, the orchard is considered complete at 100 trees. It serves to help deliver a blight-resistant tree that can hopefully one day thrive across its native habitat. And I have received a lot of questions about the nature of the trees, and I just want to assure everyone that they are 100% pure Native American chestnut trees. These are not hybrids. Not that there's anything wrong with the hybrids. They were trying to hybridize the trees to help sustain the species, but the trees we have planted are 100% native. We also love giving talks to encourage support for nature. And in 2022, we were invited to speak at the Wilton High School's class of 1962 reunion alongside Wilton Go Green. In 2022, we established a partnership with the Wilton Library along with Wilton Go Green to revitalize our in-house program, Books in a Blanket. This is where we take families out into a meadow to read stories, dance, sing, make an upcycled craft, and just explore nature. In October, we theme it after Halloween, where families dress up, and we even have a trick-or-treat parade across the meadow. This is actually one of my favorite events. That's my family there on the right. That's Amy. She's fantastic with everyone, getting everyone engaged. And there's Steve there on the left, handing out candy. We do a trick-or-treat parade. We play a freeze dance with some Halloween music. We love our partners and our community, and we're thrilled to have expanded our environmental and educational programming in 2022. With our preserves, we're conserving and protecting the lands and waters that support life. Our preserves conserve nature and history, They protect native habitats and biodiversity. They support wildlife and endangered species. And they also offer healthier lifestyles to Wilton residents. The Land Trust currently owns or holds conservation easements on 119 parcels, totaling 835 acres. And we own outright 97 parcels covering 440 acres. And what I usually tell folks when I say that is, with AA zoning, just try to picture at the 440, 220 houses just owned outright. So with AA zoning, we've preserved something close to 220 AA zoned properties. We have over half a dozen GPS interactive trail maps on our website and growing. You can locate, hike, and explore miles of Land Trust trails, make memories, and even spot some wildlife. If you could believe it, I actually took that picture there on the right with my iPhone. No, that's just an example of what's out there. We did spot the eagles, but they're flying pretty high. In 2022, the Nick Paraso Memorial Trail saw a great deal of stewardship and trail enhancements. We, meaning our volunteers, worked to revamp the trailhead with a stone dust trail, remove invasives, and plant some native trees and shrubs along the trail. The trail featured here will one day connect and span across all of North Wilton. And the Land Trust manages a fund to maintain, steward, and enhance this trail. Donations are always welcome. And if you want to learn more about getting involved with this trail, please reach out. Pursuing their Eagle Scout badges, our mighty scouts expanded upon the Matt Dooley Boardwalk on the Nick Paraso Memorial Trail. And we now have several sections of boardwalk constructed over time by several scouts that make the trail safer and more accessible to everyone. We're extremely grateful for all our members and donors and partners that made purchasing Chestnut Meadows possible, and we're very eager to open it to the public. Our building committee is working hard to bring the Chestnut Meadows Nature Preserve to life. Earlier, we heard from Steve, our president, about the strides and setbacks regarding the barn and the site developments, but we do have high hopes for getting our permit and breaking ground this year. To us, it's a little bit more than just another preserve. It's 13.5 additional acres to connect people with nature. And it's a success story to inspire further conservation in Lower Fairfield County. Having a preserve with parking and bathrooms for visitors will be a game changer for us. And we couldn't be more thrilled to bring this open space asset to the Wilton community to enjoy. That's actually a picture there of the chestnut trees, growth over 1 year. It's about 3 feet tall. So pretty soon you'll be able to walk underneath a tree that's functionally extinct in the wild. It's gonna be wild. Across our preserves, our stewardship committee is hard at work year round. They work to improve our preserves, enhance our trails, and restore habitats. They are looking for new members, so please reach out if you're interested in organizing or just simply getting your hands dirty. We skipped the slide here. There we go. Oh, Stewardship Sundays is our flagship stewarding program, and it has really taken off in 2022 with about 45 or so volunteers on average per workday. And this inclusive program brings people together to work in nature and improve our open spaces. In just an hour and a half on a Sunday, we inform, inspire, and improve our preserves. In 2022, we hosted 10 of these community work days where we removed a ton of invasive species, planted over 350 native trees, shrubs, and wildflowers. This program is in the spring and the fall, and we have a ton of fun. We conclude each of them with a potluck celebration to celebrate all that we accomplished together. The impact that our volunteers have made on restoring native pollinator habitats across Wilton has been profound. In 2022, we focused on 2 preserves, Shanks Island and the Eugenia Slaughter Native Wildflower Meadows. With our volunteers, we planted 180 native trees and shrubs at Shanks Island, and about 150 eco-type native wildflowers at the Eugenia Slaughter Native Wildflower Meadow. As a participating partner in the eco-type project, which you'll hear more about shortly from our keynote speaker, seeds are harvested from our biodiverse preserves, propagated and replanted to enrich our meadows. Wilton businesses are stepping up for the environment too. In 2022, the Outdoor Sports Center sponsored a corporate workday and established a blueberry field out on Shanks Island. Nearly 30 employees removed invasive plants and planted about 45 blueberry bushes. Shortly thereafter, ASML also sponsored a corporate workday in 2022, where a team of just about 30, ironically, employees removed invasive species again, cleared a lot more area, and added 25 blueberry bushes and spread about 4 cubic yards of mulch. We've established new partnerships to better protect our preserves. We're protecting biodiversity with the Wilton Garden Club with a newly launched effort to collect native wildflower seeds. We're maintaining our historical Comstock Hill Cemetery with the Drum Hill Chapter DAR, and we're enhancing and protective native ecosystems with Highstead through the Ecotype Project. We're restoring Henderson Pond with our neighbors. We're performing large-scale invasive abatement with the Norwalk River Watershed Association, and we're protecting native trout habitat with Trout Unlimited. This is the last section of my report, and I think the most important. Possibilities, that's something we've really been thinking a lot about here at the Land Trust as we work to advance our mission and enrich the Wilton community. We're only limited by our capacity, which is growing each and every year as we increase our team and take on more work. Nature is for everyone and all ages. An open space brings about cleaner water, fresher air, and improved mental health. And it's also said that kids who feel more connected to nature will be happier, healthier, more likely to befriend, help, and share. As you heard earlier, on the horizon is the Chestnut Meadows Nature Preserve with the Offset Barn. The opportunities to create recreational, educational, and experiential programs that bring people and families together outdoors are truly endless at the Wilton Land Trust. Your membership support helps make what feels impossible possible, and we're growing and we can't wait to do more. And finally, so where are we going? Thanks to growing interest and support for our mission, we are really able to do more than we ever could before, and we've got some pretty big plans for 2023. Now, I won't go into them line by line, but they're pretty spread across pretty much these 4 categories here with governance. The big one is to develop a strategic plan and to continue expanding our connections with people and partner and develop more partnerships, and to enhance and expand our ability to restore our trails, maintain our trails, and map our trails so that we can get more people out there connecting with nature. And as you heard earlier, continue with everything we need to develop the Chestnut Meadows Nature Preserve. It's at this point that I just want to say thank you to all our members. Your membership makes room for nature. It enriches the community and advances our mission. Everything we shared tonight was made possible by your membership support. So thank you very much. At this point, I would be happy to entertain any questions about anything I had just shared. Don't all jump at once. Okay, well, without any questions, let me stop my share here. Whoa, screen is freaking out. There we go. And let me just announce that one of my friends, colleagues, and classmates, Aaron Leflin, is on the call here. He was the former executive director of the New Canaan Land Trust, now deputy director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. CLCC is hosting its 2023 Connecticut Land Conservation Conference, March 25th. I know I'm excited to go. Our president, Steve's excited to go. Aaron, would you like to share a few words about the organization's mission and the fantastic work it's doing to support conservation across the state?
Sure. Thank you so much, David, and congrats on what seems like a really successful past year and a lot of things to look forward to in the future. The work you're doing in Wilton and the land trust community across the state is just so important to protecting the places that we all care about and want to see conserved for generations to come. As David mentioned, I'm Aaron Leflin. I'm the Deputy Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. We are the sort of umbrella organization for Connecticut's plus or minus 130 land trusts. So we work on everything from capacity building programs to training and educational programs. We have a number of funding programs that we're getting started and have up and running as well. And then we also do a lot of policy and advocacy work to make sure that conservation remains a priority at the state capitol. David mentioned that we have our Connecticut Land Conservation Conference happening on March 25th, and I invite you all to attend. It's a great day to learn about anything and everything related to land conservation and land trust work. So really anything from invasive species to removal to how to build a board to fundraising. If there's something related to land trust operations, we've probably got you covered. And we've got a really inspiring keynote speaker this year as well, coming all the way from New Zealand to talk about sort of climate angst and grief and coping with the climate crisis that we're currently in. So thanks for giving me a minute to pitch CLCC a little bit, David, and congrats again on a great year.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Before I hand it over to our keynote speaker, I just wanted to recognize that Representative Ann Hughes is on the call, and maybe she would like to also share some thoughts. She was always a great supporter of our work, and actually she was out there for our American chestnut tree planting. So yeah, Ann, anything.
Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me on your annual meeting. It's super impressive. I'm especially impressed by the outreach effort, the intergenerational outreach effort for really, you know, making an enthusiastic stewardship generation, which we need. We have a bunch of bills actually in the state legislature around preserving, well, around regulating some of that clear cutting around energy lines that is happening right now. There was a hearing today at the Capitol. You guys, be quiet. Sorry. But I want to get as many people out in our preserves, in our conservation spaces, in our public spaces to enjoy and then be passionate about becoming stewards themselves, because we can't do this virtually, really. We have to be out in these spaces and make sure that our neighbors, I think Senator Moore is on here too, that our neighbors from the cities also get a chance to enjoy these spaces and become stewards. We have some other bills also, I think that y'all are probably tracking too, that are working their way through the Environment Committee. That's really important for land conservation.
Can I say something, David, or am I live?
You are alive and you're live, yes.
Oh boy. To Ann, and also I don't know if Marilyn is still on or she's logged off, but we are applying for a grant, which is the Good to Great grant from the Connecticut Humanities.
Oh yay!
Yeah, and this will be submitted in the next few days, and it's a very important piece of our ability to finance the what we're doing at Chestnut Meadows at 183 Ridgefield Road. So just to make you aware of that, since you're here.
Do you need a letter of support?
Well, so far they haven't asked, everything's online. They haven't asked for any kind of letters of support, but it certainly can't hurt.
Sure.
I'd love to have a letter of support from you and also Marilyn. It would be great. It's been very seamless. The online application process is detailed, tedious, but not at all overwhelming. And David and I have been doing it, and I do applaud the state for setting up a process that is so easy to use. I really.
Well,
I
that's good to hear because we've gotten complaints. So I know that the administration is trying to improve on that and make it.
No, David can comment too, but look, it is tedious. I mean, we're asking you for money, so it's not abnormal for us to, okay, we have to provide details and backup and all this. So, but it has been very, the process has been very easy to use. The website's great. We're going to push the button for the submission probably tomorrow or Friday, and we'd love to have your support. It'd be great.
Any support we could get would be great.
Yeah, David or Roger, could somebody send my email that name of the grant that you're applying for, and I'll try to get you that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's the Good to Great grant.
Okay.
It's called Good to Great Connecticut Humanities, and David can send you the details.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm making a
Thank
note
you.
right now. Send grant. And before I hand it over to our guest speaker, I did want to provide Brian Emeraux a moment, if he would like to just share the impacts ASML has had, not only for our land trust, but for the Wilton community. They really just stepped out into Wilton like a bull and just spread generosity. They hosted a Giving Tuesday event, right? Fantastic food at an amazing brewery, and raised money by just talking and meeting with people. So we are definitely grateful for that support, your membership support. And if you'd like to share a few words, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Not expecting to be, I think the great work that David and the team are doing certainly speak for themselves. And it's just a pleasure to partner with the Wilton Land Trust. And, 2022 was a wonderful year for us, but it's just the beginning. And we look forward to more great things this year and down the road. So thank you all for the incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for tuning in and for the kind words. Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce the highlight of the evening, our keynote speaker, Gordy Elkins, Executive Director of Highstead. Gordy worked at Highstead as a horticulturist from 1996 to 2001, where he actually helped plant many of the plants that make up the landscape today. And in 2012, he returned to oversee their operations. And in the fall of 2019, he joined the board. He grew up in New Hampshire, where he developed a deep love for the mountains, lakes, and woodlands that make up New England's unique landscapes. And he's excited to ensure that these natural landscapes and resources are protected and persist into the future through his work at Highstead. So without any further ado, Gordy, please, I believe you can assume control of the screen and commence your slideshow.
Yes, thank you, David. I appreciate it. I'm happy to speak here today. I've got a number of kind of connections to the Wilton Land Trust going back a number of years, having worked with Donna and in the past, more recently working with David and Steve and some of the people who were on the stewardship committee and through the Ecotype project. So it's really a pleasure to be here to kind of introduce you to Highstead and to some of the work that we do. Are you able to see my screen?
It says you took control. Yep, there we go.
Okay, great. For those of you who I don't know and who aren't familiar with Highstead, I'll just give you a very brief introduction. But Highstead is a conservation nonprofit located in Reading. Our mission is to inspire curiosity about the wooded landscape and about plants in order to enhance life, preserve nature, and advance sound stewardship practices. If you haven't been to Highstead, which I assume most of you haven't, We are located in northern Reading, not far from the Bethel border. We're this purple piece of property that you can see up here. It's really a pretty unique piece of property. It works well for us. It's about 185 acres. It's large, but it's not huge. But the thing that's unique about it is that in a relatively close proximity, there are a number of different habitat types that sort of represent what can typically be seen around here. So it's excellent for taking people on educational walks and teaching them about habitat types and the types of plants and animals that dwell in them. And so just quickly, looking at our property, we've got this grassland meadow sort of to the northeast. It's at the top of a hill. Going downhill, we've got this mesic forest, which is formerly agricultural land that's overgrown. So you know what that's like with invasives. We do some research there. Further downhill, we've got a pond and wetland habitat. We've got a swamp with a swamp walk through it, which gives you access to see all sorts of unique plants that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see. And then coming up across the property, it's sort of a story of two hills with the pond in the center, but the hill on the west side is a dry, rocky hill with an oak mountain laurel forest on it. And it's where we have most of our walking trails. And it's a great place to visit. And I encourage you to come to one of our open days or sign up for one of our programs. As for me, as David said, I grew up in New Hampshire. And if you look at my phone, you'll see what I love to do is anything in the snow and ice. So whether it's skiing, skating, hiking, camping, ice climbing, I love it. You probably think I'm crazy, but it's my thing. And so you can just imagine that this year has sort of been like a dagger to the heart with the sort of warm temperatures that we've been experiencing. And the reality is that you don't need to be a lover of ice and snow to know that things have really changed. And as I was preparing this last week, I thought, well, I'm going to take a look at the average temperatures and the temperatures for this year and just compare them. And of course, this isn't scientific, but just looking at the average temperatures, you can see that this year, the high temperatures are about 12 degrees higher than the average high temperature, and that the low temperatures through January and up through last week are about 7 or 8 degrees above normal. So hopefully this is an outlier and this isn't going to be our new normal. But even so, I think it's pretty obvious that we're experiencing significant warming trends, and I think it affects us all. Even if we're not lovers of snow and ice, I think we still recognize what's happening. This map of the globe starts to show a 30-year temperature change. And if you look at it, you'll see some of the most intense, some of the areas experiencing the most intense warming are here in the Northeast, as well as Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and of course around the Arctic. And it really is, it's a little disheartening, and so the question is, what do we do about this? It's really easy to feel overwhelmed with problems of this scale. This is a global map. You think there are 8 billion people on Earth, and I'm only one of them. That's sort of like the odds of winning the lottery. Like, what can I do? 1 in 8 billion? It doesn't seem like there's much. And so it can feel easy to be overwhelmed. But to me, it's not really a message about, it being too big for anyone to do anything. Rather, it's sort of a response that we need to have that's more of an all hands on deck are needed. to sort of address some of the issues that we face in our world today. Problems like climate change weren't caused by one individual. They were caused by all of us. And I firmly believe that the solutions are really solutions that all of us need to participate in. It's not something where we can just sort of sit back and allow other people to act and wait for them to do things. And so when we look at how the environmental issues of our day are approached, it really happens on multiple scales. And what we see is that climate change, for instance, happens on an international scale. There are meetings like COP27 that was in Sharm el-Sheikh, and international leaders coming together, cooperating, planning for reducing fossil fuels and for sustainable energy sources. At a national scale, we see the Inflation Reduction Act, which is bringing hundreds of billions of dollars to promote clean energy. There are initiatives like 30 by 30, which is a commitment to protect 30% of our country's lands to promote and protect clean water, air, and healthy ecosystems. But it's interesting, though, if you look at a national map and you think about our federal response, you notice quite quickly on this map that there's a stark contrast between the East and the West. And what you see here, this is a map of federal government land ownership. And there are about 8 to 10 agencies in the country, in the federal government, that own about 45% of the land on the West and about a very small percentage of the land that's on the East. And what this says is that while the federal government can make huge contributions to changing climate change, those things will have great effect in the West. But to tackle some of these problems in the East, we need to have a different approach to it. Just for example, if you look at Alaska, almost 60% of Alaska is owned by the federal government. And if you compare that to Connecticut, only 0.3% of Connecticut is owned by the federal government. So if you kind of have this sense that, big government is going to step in and sort of solve our issues, they have a huge ability to do that, but not necessarily in our backyard. So in a practical sense, this means that the conservation that we are doing really needs to be different from that's happening in other parts of the country. The things that are working on the West Coast probably aren't going to be working on the East Coast. And we really need to have different methods for approaching some of these issues that we face today. And that's part of what we do at Heisted. One of the programs that we operate is called the Regional Conservation Partnership Network. And if you're not familiar with a regional conservation partnership, it's basically, I guess the best way to describe it is that it's a geography, and all of the conservation partners in that area are sort of come together and collaborate on affecting larger conservation projects than they could possibly take on themselves. And so this map of New England, each one of these shapes on here represents a regional conservation partnership. And actually, I've just given you the New England portion, but this map extends to Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, and beyond. It's an approach that recognizes that some of the conservation issues that land trusts face and that we face as a society, they don't just end at the town border. Aaron I missed the number that he said, but I think he said Connecticut has roughly 160 something land trusts. Each one of those, similar to Wilton and most others in Connecticut, operate within their town boundaries, but regional conservation partnerships are an opportunity to sort of cross those boundaries and have land trusts come together and partner on, at least coordinate and hopefully partner together on achieving larger objectives. So the land trust that is in our, or the regional conservation partnership that is in our part of Connecticut or our part of New England is called the Hudson to Housatonic Regional Conservation Partnership. And it has a number of sort of initiatives that it's promoting, but one of them is conserving land, of course. I have never done a website live in a PowerPoint, and this may or may not work. It's about bringing people together from different backgrounds to work on shared goals. H2H is also promoting the use of native plants to improve and restore landscapes. Additionally, it's focusing on keeping wildlife connected for health and for our native wildlife. And so what a regional conservation partnership is it's really sort of just a place for like-minded people and groups to come together and share ideas and to collaborate and to partner together. It's different from what you might think of as a regional land trust. It's not an organization that has a big geography. It's about crossing town lines and geopolitical lines and really thinking about how can we approach projects that are important to us and how can we approach them on a larger scale. And H2H has been sort of a forum where a lot of ideas have been generated there and they've sort of gone on to take a life of their own. And just to point, sorry. Oh, hold on, I'm kind of stuck here. One of those projects is the pollinator pathway. I remember Donna Merrill was just instrumental in H2H in the very beginning, and the very seeds of what I think now became pollinator pathway was, an early iteration called the Bee Highway. And it was really this idea that partners who came together in H2H wanted a way to reach out to landowners to encourage them to change the way they care for their yards. And so multiple organizations that participate in H2H had this shared vision and this shared goal. And it really sort of became a forum for them to share ideas and to connect and to sort of move this vision forward. And I think, eventually Donna was able to hook up with, Louise Washer and Jackie Olgon and Mel LeMay and others who really shared this, but a lot of those ideas and relationships came together because of H2H. And then they just sort of grew out of that. And, now pollinator pathway is just, lighting up, the country practically. If you look at the map, it's just impressive of the kind of life that has taken on and grown out of that. But the thing that's important, while pollinators and butterflies and plants and native habitat are important, I think what is really important about the pollinator pathway is this idea that connectivity is essential to our conservation efforts. wildlife and ecosystems don't just stop at the town border, but they need to have connected pathways where they can, migrate and flow through the landscape. And movement is essential as, land is developed and species are sort of forced out of their normal places. They need places to go. As the climate changes, animals and plants need paths to sort of migrate and move, and thinking regionally and in a way that's connected is essential to moving conservation forward. And I love this map that's on the Pollinator Pathway website, because it's each one of these butterfly symbols represents somebody's home landscape that they're working in. Urban expansion is correlated to negative biodiversity trends. And so as we're developing, and building more houses and sort of parking lots and shopping malls, it's having an impact on our ecosystems and the plants and animals that live there, and it's reducing biodiversity. And it's interesting because recently there was a report that 40% of all insect species are in decline globally. And then a third of them are at risk and becoming endangered. And that was reported in Biological Conservation. At the same time, in the last 50 years, there's been a 300% increase in the amount of insect pollinated food crops. So there are these two crossing trends. We're losing our insects, and we're increasing our dependence on them for our food. And so while, pretty flowers and butterflies like the one I showed at the beginning of this are wonderful, it's really a lot more critical than that. It's really, this idea of protecting pollinators is really about food security when you really boil it down. And so the efforts of all these connected landscapes are incredibly important. If you're not familiar with the Gottlieb Native Plant Garden, it's a story that is really inspiring to me. It's located in Beverly Hills, and I don't know if I can think of a landscape more developed than Los Angeles in Southern California. But it's a 1-acre garden in the center of Beverly Hills. It was planted with 200 different species of plants years ago, and it's now developed into this lush native plant refuge. But the thing that's amazing about it is that it's 1 acre in the middle of suburban urban sprawl, and they've had a naturalist who goes there and is documenting all the species. And in 5 years, he's documented over 1,500 different species that are utilizing that 1 acre in the middle of this, urban, desert. And so he's documented cougars, osprey, and they've even discovered previously undocumented insects, like unknown to science, new species discovered there, which, that personally, that just blows my mind, that, the importance of having that 1 acre there in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, and just how important and how utilized it is. It really starts to make you understand the importance of, the pollinator pathway, all of these connected nearby, gardens and yards and landscapes that are being managed for pollinators. It really becomes essential, and it's really motivating to hear that, if 1 acre can make such an impact, how much more if many of us are doing it, and we're cooperating and collaborating. I'll just point this out briefly, but another sort of focus that I think was an idea germinated in through H2H was the Green Corridor, which is an Aspetuck Land Trust initiative. It incorporates the pollinator pathway. It's this idea of, taking the preserved land that's existing in the landscape and connecting them together to build more corridors, either by additional conserved land or by encouraging the landowners who live between these preserves to adopt some natural and native landscaping methods. And this map in particular shows some of their focus areas. One of them, which is this Wilton Weston corridor, which I know is something that Wilton has focused as well. So even though Wilton is working on one side of the border and Aspetuck is working on the other side of the border, both organizations are sort of doing their bit and coming together as a whole, really contributing to this much larger landscape. So it's a very exciting project. I remember Donna talking about some of the properties there, and I encourage you to just kind of keep that up and continue to pursue that. Another thing that grew out of H2H2 is the Ecotype project. This started as sort of a presentation that one of the host partners did about the importance of ecotype plants. And if you're not familiar with what an ecotype plant is, I'll try to give you just sort of a brief discussion. But this map is what we call it, an ecoregion map. And an ecoregion is an area that shares similar types of geography and climate. And so similar types of plants live in these areas. And so the one that's in sort of this olive green that covers most of Connecticut is called Ecoregion 59. It goes a little ways up into the Hudson Valley. But in it, and plants that originate in this ecoregion, we call ecotype plants. And an ecotype is a genetically distinct population of plant or animal that's found in a particular habitat. And so when we talk about genetically distinct, the best sort of analogy that I can come up with is it's sort of like microbrew. If you're at all into beer, you know that there are thousands of microbreweries across the country, and you go into a store and you look in the refrigerator and there are just, a huge diversity of types of different beer. And if you go in Connecticut and you look at one in, Florida or California, it'll be completely different and have completely different selection of beer there. And in a similar way, there are plants that have large geographies across wide swaths of the US, but they're not all exactly the same genetically. If you think of Budweiser as like the one beer that smothers the entire country in sort of uniform beer, that would be like one nursery selling all of the seed for milkweed to the entire country. What you would get is it would all come from one source. It would all be, if not identical, it would be similar, and it would sort of smother all of the distinct, unique populations of milkweed or that are distinct to different regions of the country. And this is like sort of promoting the microbeer and saying we don't really want Budweiser. And in the same way, it's saying we really want to preserve that unique genetic diversity that's in this region and make sure it's not smothered with something coming from outside the region. And the reason we do this is that it's good for the environment, but it also makes sense. If we're going to be planting back in our landscape, the plants that grew here for eons, they've become genetically adapted to survive here. They're used to our climate. They're used to, the water regimes that we get, the seasonality of the rains, where ones that come from a different part of the country, even though it may be the same species, they might bloom at a different time of year. They may have, they may fruit and flower at different times of the year, and they're not exactly the same. And that can be a problem with any insects that have sort of co-evolved to depend on that plant. If a migrating bird or an insect that, hatches at a certain time of year is expecting a flower to be there, but it's there at the wrong week or the wrong time of year because a plant was brought from Florida and planted in Connecticut, and even though it's the same species, it doesn't have the same exact characteristics, and that can be a problem. And additionally, using ecotypes, it preserves that diversity that I was referring to earlier. So what is the Ecotype Project? It's sort of this idea that it starts at the very beginning with botanists collecting native wild seed. And this is really where Wilton comes in. You are one of at least a dozen different organizations that Highstead works with. And what we do is we go on your land with permission and with agreements in advance, and we sustainably collect seed. And then what happens is that seed is given to organic farmers who grow the seed crops. The seed is saved and harvested, it's cleaned, and then it goes to growers who are able to amplify it and make it available for conservation projects. And part of the reason of doing this is we want people to use native wild seed, but we don't want everybody going out into the wild and just over collecting seed. And so by having Highstead as sort of a trusted broker between the conservation organizations that own the property and the farmers and nurserymen who amplify the seed and who will eventually make it available commercially, it sort of puts a buffer in there that helps protect some of these important natural lands from being over collected or over harvested or unethically having unethical collection on it. And so we sort of work as a trusted trusted broker in the middle of that. These seeds are eventually, they make it back to gardens. They're grown into plants for pollinator pathways, for restoration projects that you have worked on and others that David was talking about in his presentation. And then they contribute to pollinator diversity that thrives in this local ecoregion and in this ecology, and that cycle sort of persists. But it's not possible without landowners who have these naturally occurring populations of seed. And so, it really is dependent. I mean, the preserves that you own, they really are refuges in a way, and they are contributing to landscape restoration on a much larger scale. And so I thank you for allowing us to collect a minimal amount of seed from your property, but one that will be amplified and go out and contribute to lots of important restoration projects and pollinator gardens in this region. This is Slaughter Field. This is Lespedeza capitata and little blue stem. We didn't collect little blue stem, but we did collect the Lespedeza, some species of asters and goldenrod here. And so, thank you again. Your contribution is essential. But as you know, in addition to being land trust members, we're also all homeowners. And I think one question is a homeowner, you know, why is it important and why should I be planting, you know, native plants and ecotype plants on my property? And I sort of, you know, referenced this before, but it's again, this idea that what was reported in biological conservation with the 40% decline in all insect species, you know, what we are doing in creating pollinator habitat is essential for food production and the sustainability of our ecosystems. This is a picture that I got off the internet, and I thought it had to be one of a kind, but what it is it's showing somebody hand pollinating, I think it's a pear tree. And I thought certainly, you know, this is just a picture for shock value. And as I did more digging, there was a study where they did a literature review on hand pollination, and worldwide, there are 20 crops, economically important crops, such as apples, palm oil, and cacao, which is used to make chocolate, that in certain parts of the world are exclusively hand pollinated, which seems absolutely absurd. But there are pockets of the world where the pollinators that are needed for those food crops, either they don't exist because the plants are being grown in the wrong habitat, or they existed and there are just not enough of them to actually do the hand pollination, and one can, or to do natural pollination. And, you know, one can only imagine how inefficient this is and how expensive it is. And without the pollinators that are providing these ecological services for us, you know, you can't imagine this kind of being sustainable long term. So what do I do about it? And the one thing that is a message that's strong about pollinator pathway is to rethink your lawn. You know, that sort of perfect uniform grass that we all love. And there's a time and there's a place for it. But I'd like to put our lawns into context just for a minute to sort of give us pause to think about, you know, they may seem like just sort of wasted space or side space, but they can actually be incredibly important. If you look at all the national parks in the US, it's about 52 million acres. If you take Alaska out of that, there are fewer than 20 million acres of national parks in the lower 48 states and the other territories. And actually that would include Hawaii. So think of that, 52 million acres are all the parks, and about 20 million acres are just the lower 48. The role that land trusts play in conservation, around the country, there are over 61 million acres of protected land. And so this is, you know, part of your contribution as the Wilton Land Trust to, you know, how we protect land as a group. You know, we come together, we form associations, these associations protect land, and they're absolutely essential, and they're bigger. I mean, you think about what's included in that 61 million acres, just iconic lands, you know, if that's bigger than all the national parks. And so, you know, you think of like Yellowstone, Yosemite, Denali, Mount Rainier, the Tetons, like these iconic, massive, important parks, and yet land trusts are doing more land protection than the park services. Sorry. If you look at lawns, there are 40 million acres of lawns in the US. That's not as much as we have national parks, thankfully, but it's still a huge number. Remember, in the lower 48 states, there are about 20 million acres of national parks, and yet there are close to 40 million acres of lawn in that same landscape. So lawn is outpacing national parks in the lower 48 states. And one of the initiatives that's come up in the last couple of years, and one that I think is interesting, is one that is promoted by Doug Tallamy. And it's this idea of having a homegrown national park. And their goal is to have 20 million acres. Just think about if everybody took half of their lawn and allowed it to go back to native plantings. It would transform the landscape. You think about the 1 acre that I mentioned at the Gottlieb Garden and how important that was. Now multiply that by 20 million and spread it across the whole country. It starts to make an impact on the scale of our national parks. So even though it feels like just part of your lawn, you know, when everybody starts to contribute, it adds up quite quickly. You know, so it's this idea of transforming, you know, part of your lawn to something a little more wild, and it doesn't have to be your entire lawn. Even at only half, it makes a huge contribution. And some states, such as Pennsylvania, their Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, in 2021, they had a grant program where they were actually paying homeowners to start converting their lawns back to natural meadows and woodlands. And we need both. I'm sort of showing meadows, but I don't want to undersell the value of trees and shrubs either. But they're just absolutely essential for clean water, as a home for pollinators and bees. They increase biodiversity. They lower the maintenance. They lower the maintenance requirements of our lands. They require fewer inputs of water, fertilizer, and chemicals. And so, you know, it's just like a win-win-win when we start looking at how to convert our lawns and the value of it. So I've talked about ecotype plants. I've talked about converting your lawn. And one of the issues that always comes up with people is the questions they ask is, you know, what do I plant and how do I get started? And while ecotype plants are sort of like the gold standard of what you want to plant in your yard, the reality is they're not always readily available. But don't let that stop you. You know, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. And I love this, this graphic that was developed by Lydia Pan, who's in the Connecticut Native Plant Working Group. And she sort of helps us with a decision tree. You know, the best is to plant the wild type or the ecotype or a straight native species. If you can't get the local ecotype or straight native species from the local area, then get one that originates from outside the area. That's a reasonable choice in most instances. If you're not able to get either of those, proceed with caution. There's this thing they're called nativars, where they're cultivars of native plants. And you think of some of the types of like cone flowers and any plant that has like a patented name. They can be ecologically functional, but probably not as functional as the species that they were derived from. And they're certainly not going to bring genetic diversity to your landscape the way seed-grown plants was. They tend to be asexually propagated, which means they're all clones. If you must, there are some exotic plants that are non-native that can be helpful to the environment. They're not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And do not plant anything that's suspected invasive exotic species. So sort of like a nice decision tree to kind of help you think about how to change your yard. and replant with natives and ecotypes. And then why are we doing it? It's absolutely essential to bring this wildlife back into our landscapes. You know, Doug Talamy has done some amazing research, and I won't go into it too deeply here, but one of the things that comes out of that is just the importance of oak trees. You know, the white oak is our state tree. This slide is of a red oak that Mrs. Dudley, who started Highstead, grew from an acorn, and it's now a tree. It's, you know, it was planted in the 80s. She's still alive. This tree's got to be 60 feet tall, and it just is filled with all sorts of Lepidoptera, which are caterpillars. Doug Talamy's research has discovered over 500 species of caterpillars that live on oak trees. Goldenrod, asters, some of these plants are so important to hosting insects and the caterpillars that are like the base of the food chain for birds and so much other wildlife. They're absolutely essential. You know, just a quick picture. This is, I believe it's a lapid moth. I'm not really a lepidopterist by any means, but it's just one of the first moths I found just walking out to the oak tree, taking a quick picture, a quick scan for something and picturing it. One of the things that, you know, people sort of knock against native plants is that, you know, the plantings, they have to be wild or unkempt. And yet there are iconic landscapes that people flock to in droves that are all native plants. This is the High Line in New York City. That's a native, mostly native plant garden that is very artfully designed and plays an important function. And because it's planted along this former railroad, it inadvertently, or well, probably intentionally, forms a connection, a habitat connection along the length of this. Another sort of beautiful native plant garden is this Millennial Park in Chicago. I was there about 5 or 6 years ago and took this picture. But yes, it's not neatly manicured the way a lawn is, and it's a little bit wild. And yet at the same time, it's also got just an incredibly beautiful, aesthetic to it. A project that we're involved with in Connecticut is the restoration of the meadowlark butterfly, which is this small butterfly. It's about the size of a quarter. It feeds exclusively on round-leaved ragwort, and we've been working with a group, the Connecticut Butterfly Society, to do some restoration plantings. You know, part of what the Ecotype project is doing is providing plants back to the landscape, back to the landowners that are helping us by allowing us to collect on their property. And I like this because it points out it's a very specific plant and insect relationship. This meadowlark butterfly only lays its eggs on 1 or 2 species of plants. And if we're not planting this round-leaved ragwort, then we are not planting the essential food source that this butterfly needs. And this is just one I use it as an example of many. The need for diversity in the plants that we choose is essential to maintaining the diversity of the landscapes that we have. I'll skip this. What else do we do? Leaves are not litter. Xerces Society is one of the groups that we work with, and they have this Leave the Leaves campaign that they've been going on. for years now, just the importance of having these natural unkempt spaces. And then, of course, if you've ever looked at the amount of pollution that comes out of yard equipment, it's astronomical. You know, this chart shows that a two-stroke Echo leaf blower makes significantly more emissions than a Ford Raptor. And half an hour with the two-stroke leaf blower is the equivalent of driving the Ford Raptor 3,900 miles, which is just hard to believe. Fortunately, most places are phasing out the two-stroke leaf blowers. But in addition to being noisy and destroying the leaves, they're also polluting the environment. So we're sort of shooting ourselves in the foot in multiple ways. So I guess, you know, just to try to wrap it up, this is another picture that came from Slaughter Field, but it's, to me, it's an incredibly beautiful picture. If I look at this, you know, the light, the color, sort of the wildness of it is incredibly beautiful. And yet it's not that sort of typical neatly manicured landscape that we've become so accustomed to. And I think the thing that I really see and what I encourage others to see in the landscape is how much more vibrant and interesting a landscape is when you know that it's connected to a larger whole, when you know that, that the holes that are eaten in the leaf of that plant or that flower are, providing food for an insect that's then feeding a bird that is, then becoming prey for a bobcat, and that there's sort of this circle of life, and that what we're planting in our landscapes is helping to sustain that ecosystem, to me, is a lot more beautiful than just having, a nicely manicured, rose garden with leaves that have no holes in them and everything is in bloom. And while there is a certain beauty to that, and I don't totally knock it, to me, it's just a lot more interesting and a lot more beautiful to know that in addition to creating healthy ecosystems, these gardens that we're planting, these yards that we're stewarding, are providing habitat. They're providing clean water, clean air, homes and shelter for insects and wildlife, that they're, the trees on them are capturing carbon and storing it, and the down branches that fall, there are, that carbon's being recycled into the soil. So if well managed, your landscape, it can really provide a whole plethora of benefits, both aesthetic and environmental. So I'll sort of leave you with those thoughts, and thank you for having me, David, and everyone. And I will try to stop sharing. There we go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gordy. That was extremely enlightening. I have some questions, but I'll open it up to our guests. I hear someone chuckling.
Can I raise my hand?
Please do so, Mike.
I think Donna is still on, so I give Donna a heads up on this question. I have two questions. It's pretty daunting to see that we're like a drop in the bucket here in Wilton, but I remember Donna, when I first joined the Land Trust, saying that I have to get my act together here, because at 183, we are like ground zero in the middle of the pollinator pathway in our region. And I never even heard of a pollinator pathway. And so I'm wondering, should we be doing anything at 183 to make it a better central point or ground zero for the pollinator pathway? And I do have a second question, which is more for David and Jordy, which is, in general, should we be planting other things or just leave it alone at 183 to help species like this butterfly, this size of a quarter? I forget what you called it. Or should we just leave things alone and just let nature take its course? So 183 is one of the few properties where we are actually very proactive in the land trust, and we can do things there. Most of the other properties, we leave them alone and, nature runs its course. So these are the two questions that I have. One is kind of pollinator pathway oriented, and the other is just, in general, should we be doing things that help, species like this butterfly?
Yeah, Mike, was that question to Gordy, me, or Donna, or all three?
Okay, so the question about the pollinator pathway is Donna. And it's pollinator pathway at 183 for Donna and Jordy. And then the second question about should we be planting things to make the butterflies and so forth, thrive at 183 is you, David, and Jordy. So why don't we do Donna and Jordy first?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Thanks for asking these questions. 183 is a really, really important property for not just creating biodiversity, but the pollinator pathway, as you know, was started by a member of the Wilton Land Conservation Trust, together with Highstead and H2H. And really, as we have spread out from the epicenter here, people all look to Wilton and see it as the beginning of the pollinator pathway. If the 183 is just such an excellent example of a meadow habitat, which is pretty rare in its pristine condition, and anything we can do to just keep it that way. I do think that I'm going to kind of sneak in and answer a little bit of the question that you directed to David and Jordy, but introducing more diversity just slowly over time is really what would be very easy to do and important to do up at 183. So easy to do.
Yeah, and I would just sort of go along with that and say, I think there's sort of a time and a place for both of those types of things. I think there are habitats which are already diverse and can be, are sort of pristine and worth keeping them in their state without kind of, trying to muck them up with too much human intervention. On the flip side, there are, meadows that have been grazed by cows for, 75 years, and there's nothing in them except, grasses from, Europe or whatever. Those types of landscapes are excellent for just, they've been, sort of monkeyed around with, and they're prime spots for doing a restoration and for being a little more wild. I mean, you need some of each. I think you need protected lands in some places where you just let them evolve naturally. And then there are other places where we've gone in and we've already, kind of messed them up, and we really do need to go in and try to reintroduce and increase diversity. And I will just mention quickly, I didn't say this, but we don't work with endangered species with the Ecotype project. Those types of reintroductions really need to be sort of overseen by a highly qualified and usually sort of state registered botanist. So if you've got plans for, reintroducing some rare plant, I would just encourage you to really make sure you're checking with the real experts on that. And I don't consider myself an expert on endangered plants.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you both for that. So to Mike and to everyone else who's listening and potentially in the future, because this was recorded and will live on our website. Mike was mostly right when he said we leave a lot of our properties alone. And what I'd like to clarify on that is we leave a majority of our acreage alone, but we are offering and conducting stewardship and restoration projects across a multitude of our properties. So for instance, at Shanks Island, the tip where we are working, when we do restoration projects like we're doing there, and we will continue to do, we are removing invasive species from an area and putting in its place these native species that support wildlife from megafauna down to insects. So, and then at Slaughter, if you will, we just introduced or reintroduced propagated seeds from Slaughter itself at one of our stewardship Sundays. So at 183, or Chestnut Meadows as it's been renamed, we have over time removed most of the invasive species there. It's on consistent watch. However, we are very aware that the development of the site will introduce, unfortunately, invasives by turning the soil over. So what our plan to do there is to plant first those disturbed areas with wild grasses, native wild grasses, which can be more easily controlled to reduce invasives over time. And then, as Donna had suggested, we will be introducing wildflowers in those areas that are solely grasses and beyond. And what we've already done since the onset of the construction of the barn, there was several areas that had been disturbed. And at a stewardship Sunday, we actually spread wildflowers and grasses, and you could already see them there. Whether or not that area is going to be recovered up or not, we did do that, and I've walked through it and seen tons of wildflowers there. The other thing that's going to be great at Chestnut Meadows is going to be our demonstration garden area. And this isn't really ironed out. And this is the project that Steve was mentioning earlier in partnership with the Wilton Gardening Club, in that we hope to display, I don't want to say similarly to the pictures Gordy showed of the High Line, but we hope to display in a natural way, but manicured and labeled, these plants that folks can put in their gardens. So they're, I've been to White Memorial. No, not White Memorial. Sorry, that's not the one. There's a big nursery up here in Litchfield, and the name is escaping me. But you walk through this living landscape of everything's labeled, and then you can go buy those plants. So the idea with the demonstration garden is similar to that, where we can showcase what works, what looks fantastic, what's native, and label it and encourage folks to then do what Gordy had suggested, which is plant some on their properties, whether they're giving up lawn or putting it in a pot on their front step. They're supporting and contributing to the pollinator pathway and to advancing our mission within Wilton and abroad. Does anyone else have any questions?
Thanks, everybody. That certainly answers my question and then some. So thanks.
You're welcome, Mike. It was a really good question. Does anyone else have any other questions for Gordy? I know Wayne's on the call from the Wilton Garden Club, and he had kicked off a mini version of what it is that you're working on, where he's collecting native wildflower seeds and propagating them and hoping to maybe one day sell them at a Wilton Land Trust, a Wilton Garden Club plant sale. Wayne, did you have any questions for Gordy?
No, actually, Gordy, I want to reach out to you and talk to you about a lot of stuff, but don't really need this whole crowd to be involved in all that. I'm also here my wife, Anna Gura, we're kind of a team here on the Conservation Committee of the Wilton Garden Club. But yeah, we've, through some of the land trust properties and other properties and meadows in town, have collected about 86 species of seeds, and we've sown about 60. We're doing winter seed sowing in jugs, that milk jugs, water jugs. It gives them little mini greenhouses.
Yeah.
And without too much detail. We are in the process of doing exactly what David said. We'll be planting these in town later in the year, and then hopefully in 2024 they'll be big enough and healthy enough to sell as Wilton's own native plants. You know, harvested here, sown here, planted here, sold here, keeping it local, but again, natives. And we would like to put as much ecotype in as possible, but we're working on an amateur level of what you're doing at Highstead, but trying to follow the same procedures and same processes. We don't have founder plots. It's a little beyond our, you know, well, it's a little more than we can.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
feel free to reach out. I will share my slides with David. He asked for a copy of those to circulate. I'll put my email on it, or probably the better thing is to just go to the Highstead website, and there's, you know, like the Who We Are staff tab or whatever. And there should be a contact. My emails should be available through that if you're looking for it.
We'll talk.
Right.
Thank you very much.
One of my questions I had for you, Gordy, is how does Highstead support conservation organizations across Connecticut outside of the ways you had already presented?
Yeah, I mean, mostly the way that we act really to sort of bring people together, convene groups of people. That's the primary way that we support conservation. We do some research in addition that's helpful for a lot of conservation groups. We just had a paper released in the fall on the importance of carbon in the landscape and the importance of forests and managing them for climate change. And that's an example of a research paper that we did that, you know, we try to sort of provide ammunition for, you know, people to sort of do with whatever they want that will advance conservation. We can't do any sort of advocacy because of our lobbying because of our tax status. We're a private foundation, so there's a zero tolerance, but we're allowed to do research and give it to people, and then they can sort of, you know, do what they want with it. And so we try to provide resources that allow them to do their work.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent. Across your work, are you looking for any more properties to be put into the roster of where you collect seeds? Is there anything anyone on this call or we can do to help support that effort?
There may be. I didn't talk about it, but the Ecotype project seems to be sort of scaling up across all of New England. And I think, I mean, basically, the most important thing, we will be developing lists of plants that we'll be searching for, and those are kind of in the works now. So at that point, it will be sort of helpful to, you know, we'll distribute those lists and basically have eyes and ears on the ground looking for them. You know, I can't be everywhere looking for every plant, but if lists are made available and people can say, hey, we have this growing here, and give us some tips, that's really helpful.
Oh, that would be excellent. What is the best way for organizations and homeowners to come across Ecotype plants?
Right now, they are mostly available through an online seed collaborative called Eco59. That is only selling seeds. The plants are a little bit harder to come by right now. They are available at some garden club sales and some nursery sales. There's a nursery in Danbury called Tiny Meadow, and they're a native plant nursery. It's newer. They don't sell all Ecotype plants, but they sell a significant amount of it. And actually, the woman who started it is the woman who gave the talk that sort of launched the Ecotype project as an H2H project.
That's excellent. I really appreciate you sharing that. I know we, as a land trust, we get some of our plants from Planter's Choice, and they also carry some Ecotype plants as well.
Planter's Choice does their wholesale. So as a land trust, you can buy them there.
Yeah.
Homeowners, it becomes an issue. But
Yeah, I sorry, I should have said that as well. Yeah, we're an organization, so we buy a lot of our plants there. They make the list very native and ecotype friendly with asterisks, and you can quickly search for the native varietal versus the non-native varietals you were describing earlier. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions for Gordy?
It's not a question, but I'd just like to thank Jordy very much. Is it Jordy or Gordy?
Jordy.
Jordy. Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
I'd
That's
like
all
to
right. You're in
thank
good.
Jordy
It
so much
happens all the
for
time, David.
a wonderful presentation. It's very heartwarming to me. I told Jordy once this before, but I actually have a family friend of Liz Dudley, the founder of Highstead. So to me, it's personally gratifying that this little small world comes together, having you come and talk to our land trust. So thank you so much for that. It's been a very fruitful and fun evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks. Well said, Steve. Before I conclude, I have one final question, not about nature, but what is the highest ice wall you've ever climbed?
The tallest or the highest, and they're not quite the same.
They're not the same. Okay. Tallest.
The tallest is probably 300 or 400 feet.
Jeez.
The highest is, probably 3,500 feet, because it's, up on the side of a tall mountain. You have to hike to it to get to it.
That's
So,
incredible. Wow.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We would like to express our gratitude for you giving your time and your lightning talk. Your presentation definitely highlighted the significance of creating and sustaining native habitats and ways upon which organizations and just typical homeowners can collaborate on that. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us. And we really appreciate your time and passion. Thank you so much. As Gordy had stated, his slides will be made available. I'll be sending a follow-up email with this video, his slides, and potentially links, maybe one to Tiny Meadow or something where we can purchase some of these types of plants. One final plug I have while we're all on this call is that the Land Trust is doing a lot of this exciting work. And if you have any inkling at all to get involved, please don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, anyone to just take a photo or greet people at an event. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be trained. Just you can get involved in various ways other than getting your hands dirty or needing to know a lot. And so thank you all for this. And if there's no other questions, that would conclude our 2023 annual meeting.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Night.
Okay. How do I get this out of the way?